right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter for free by going to ziprecruiter.com/talk. That's ziprecruiter.com/talk.
Hello, everybody. This is Big Chuck. Let's take a look at your Weather Center forecast. Sun and clouds will mix today. Slight chance of a shower or thunderstorm this afternoon. The high today near 90 degrees. Overnight down to 68. Thursday, cloudy. Showers, thunderstorms are likely in the afternoon, and they could contain gusty winds. The high on Thursday, 85. Good morning, everybody. I am Big Chuck, old Mr. One Size Fits All. It's 9:26, and I am so glad to have you with me this morning on the Morning Marathon. And I've been telling you this morning I have a very special guest in the studio who's joining me right now. He just came in, and I want you to meet this guy. He's got a great story, and I'll give you just a little bit of a background here. As you know, I've talked about my daughter Katie and her husband Robert Duncan. And they live in Enterprise, Alabama. And, of course, you were all part of it when we had our first grandbaby, of course. Robert is he just got his wings and for being a Black Hawk pilot. I don't know a thing about a Black Hawk pilot. All I know about Black Hawks is a movie. And Robert is now going to be stationed in Hawaii for 3 years, he and Katie and my grandson Connor. And so they're making kind of like a grand tour of the country to visit with family. And he's visiting us this week before they go off to Hawaii. And so Katie is here and little Connor is here and Robert Duncan is here and he's in the studio with me this morning and I want you to meet him. Good morning, Robert. How you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you today?
I am doing just fine. Well, all right. As you know, you've been in it for a couple days. I've had so many questions because you're so far away and I've been waiting to ask you these questions. I thought I'd share these with my listeners too. So Robert, as you can tell by his accent, is from the South. I don't think that's a big surprise. And they live in Alabama. He's got Georgia roots. And let's just get right into it, Robert. First of all, is your family, some of these questions obviously I know, but I want to share it with our listeners. Your family in the military, you got a military history?
Yes, sir, I do. I have a very substantial military history. My grandfather he did 20 plus years in the United States Army through Vietnam and Korea. My father also served through Desert Storm. And as far back as like my great-great-grandfather was in different militaries throughout the world. I do have some German ties also.
Mm-hmm. Do you are you the only one in active military in the family, or are your dad's retired? Your grandpa?
Yep, they're all out of the service now. I do believe I'm the only one. I don't think I've ever actually sat down and thought about that question before, but I do believe that I am the only one active duty serving at this time.
Okay, your dad, your grandfather, all of them Army or?
Yes, sir. Everybody's been Army. We really haven't changed branches much.
What would they have said? What would your grandfather have said if you said, "I'm going in the Navy, Grandpa"?
I think he would have supported it. I threw around the idea of going to become a Marine there for a little while. Mm-hmm. They were pretty supportive of it. But as you said, aviation's kind of been my passion since I was a kid. I actually remember driving up to Washington, D.C. as a kid, a 12-hour drive with my mom and my sister and my dad. And, I was maybe 12, 13 years old, and I told them, hey, I want to be a pilot. And they all kind of, at that age, you're just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, you can do that. Mm-hmm. If everybody can do what they want. So I think aviation's always been in my blood, and the Army gave me the best option to be able to continue that.
Did you, was there a lapse, or were you right high school into Army?
No, sir. At 18, my father told me, he said, I want you to wait a couple years, be a kid, and so at 21, I was doing what every other 21 was doing, 21-year-old
We
was
don't
doing,
need to talk about that, by the way, on the air.
It was just having fun, and so at 22, I was driving home from work one day, and I saw a recruiting station, and I said, I think it's time. So I kind of pulled in and filled out the paperwork, and about 10 days later, I was standing at Fort Jackson at basic training saying, what in the world did I just sign up for?
Do?
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you a couple of things, because I don't know how it really works. You join the Army, and when you sign up Did you say to that guy, I'm really interested in flying, or not?
I did. I did. I went into the recruiting station and said, I'd really like to be part of aviation. At this time, it was the big surge into Iraq back in 2008. And there was a big push to get the jobs filled that were needed in the Army. And aviation wasn't really everybody wanted aviation, so there wasn't slots that were just sitting there. So the recruiter pushed me in doing a different job. And through work and just moving around, talking to different people. Within a year of being in the Army, I reclassed into becoming a non-rated crew member for Blackhawks, which is the person that sits in the back. You operate the machine guns, you load passengers, you do everything from the pilot seat back.
Okay, let's go to that point. When you were ready a year into the Army and you're ready to make a decision to go into the aviation part of it, did you say, I want to be in aviation, and they would have said, all right, you're gonna fly a transport plane, or did you say, I'm really interested in the helicopters, let's do that?
Yeah, it was.
Did they give you flexibility?
They did. I went into what they call a career counselor's office, and I said, I'm really interested in becoming part of aviation, and they say, they print out the list of different jobs, and there's some tests that you have to take joining the military, and that test will actually tells the military what you're good at, what you're not so good at, where they should field you, basically. So they pulled it out, and they saw my scores, and they basically said, what job do you want? And 15 Tango was the name of the job, and it's a Blackhawk maintainer, mechanic, and that was the one that I really wanted. So the career counselor worked with me for a couple months and moved some stuff around, and I had a school date. So it just
Where are you at that point in your career? Geographically?
I was at Fort Gordon, Georgia, and after I took the school, they moved me up to Fort Eustis, Virginia, which is right there on Virginia Beach.
And that is where you learned your Blackhawk training?
That's where I learned how to become a mechanic on a Blackhawk. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we and that's actually where me and Katie started dating, and
so you're training to be a Blackhawk mechanic at Fort Eustis, always with your eye on the pilot seat?
Yes, sir. I did join. There's a program that the military has. It's called High School to Flight School. It's not so much or street to seat. I guess it's more preferred, or what they call it now. And I had talked to the recruiters about it, but at the time, again, with the surge, it was, these are the jobs that we need. So if you are wanting to join the Army, this is the job you're going to take. So that program still does exist. Going through flight school now, there was a lot of people that did use that program. So it's definitely a great thing out there. If you have an aviation type, you want to fly, you want to be a pilot, it's definitely something to get to your recruiting office and talk about.
Okay, so now you're in Blackhawk Mechanic Training School, Fort Eustis, Virginia, and from that point to today is 2 years. Is that a 2-year time bridge we're talking about right now?
No.
4 years.
That would have been 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Because I left Fort Eustis, and that's when they gave me orders to go to Germany, and of course me and Katie were like, but.
Yeah.
So we went to Germany, and I worked as a mechanic.
What was the next step up after that?
Well, then I worked as a mechanic in Iraq for a year. When we came back, some flights, non-rated crew member, which is what I was at the time, flight spots opened up in flight companies, which are, so now not just working on them, I could also go fly in the back of them. I couldn't touch the controls or anything, but I could fly in the back of them. So I became what they called a crew chief. I did that in Germany for about a year, and then they saw how hard I was working and how much passion I had for the job, so they came to me and asked me if I wanted to be a flight instructor, which is somebody that teaches crew chiefs how to be a crew chief, basically. So I did that for about a year. Went to Afghanistan, and while in Afghanistan, again they came down and they said, you're real driven, you're real motivated. We would like to offer you this, what they call a standardization instructor. So that is a higher level of responsibility. You're basically teaching the people that teach people how to crew. And while there, I ran into a guy named CW5 Walton, a good friend of mine now. kind of mentored me, asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, I really want to go to flight school. And he asked me, how far along are you with the process? Because the process it's a lengthy process. And I told him the truth. I said, I really haven't done much because it's been deployment, get ready to deploy, deployment, get ready to deploy. I just haven't had the time. And with great support from Katie and Mr. Walton, long nights and early mornings of writing and rewriting and, having to take different tests and get letters of recommendation from people that work above me that I worked for, basically. So Mr. Walton kind of took me under his wing and told me that he would help me do everything he possibly could to get in. And once we got back from Afghanistan in 2012, we got back in April of 2012. I continued to work on the packet. I got it turned in November of 2012 is when me and Katie found out that, 2013 is when me and Katie found out that I had been selected for the warrant officer flight program for the United States Army.
That's great. All right, let's go to your two tours. Which one was first, Iraq?
Iraq was first.
All right, so you are in a combat zone in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and you are, at that point, you are a mechanic for Black Hawks.
Yes, sir.
What does it do to a Black Hawk helicopter when they come back after a mission and they've been out all day in 110 heat and sand? I mean, what is you think? Oh boy, here we go. Here comes another one.
Yeah, it's a lot of long hours trying to keep. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that aviation's a huge part of the battlefield. It changes the battlefield. It gets us moving faster than anybody else because helicopters can get you from point A to point B. And at the time, IEDs were a big thing over there, so you didn't want to be on the road. You wanted to be in the sky. So we were flying tons of hours, which put lots of wear and tear on the helicopters, the heat, the sand, the enemy, all that type of stuff. It puts big wear and tear on those helicopters. So they would come in and, they would land after a 12-hour day, and for the next 12 hours, you were trying to get it fixed and patched up and get new things put in it and fix everything because, between the 12 hours after it lands, it's probably going to go back out for another 12 hours. So it's there was 2 shifts of us, about 15 to 20 people per shift, and it was 24-hour operations. 7 days a week. Just
which one, in your opinion, was a more difficult scenario, Afghanistan or Iraq? From your position, from your job.
Yeah, I would say Afghanistan was difficult because of the flying part. It's very, Iraq was just hot and it was very flat and very sandy. Afghanistan is very mountainous.
People forget that that's not a desert country. No. That there are mountains there that are bigger than any we have in this country.
The southern part of Afghanistan is pretty flat, pretty deserty. But as you move up through the central and up to the north part of Iraq or Afghanistan, I apologize. It becomes a very treacherous mountainous terrain again, where helicopters are the only way that we could get up there and get people in and get people out. So we were flying it, and I would definitely say Afghanistan they both had their challenges, but Afghanistan definitely is the one that most pilots are like, okay, here we go. This is going to be an interesting year, to say the least.
Sure. Will you ever go back? I mean, I know that you don't have a decision. You're not part of the decision-making process on that, I don't think. But you were talking about a time frame that we all know in America as the surge, of course, and things were doubled and tripled and quadrupled over there. Do you think you will go back over there?
We still have forces over there, so I mean, it is definitely a possibility. Not so much in the next 3 years. Being in Hawaii, we have a different part of the world that we're worried about over there that we watch out for and make sure that is safe for Americans. But in 3 years, if they send me somewhere and that unit is slotted to go back, then yeah, I would definitely go back.
So how will that feel to go back, for example, to Afghanistan, not as a guy who's staying at the base waiting for the plane to come in, but the helicopter to come in, but bringing the helicopter in?
It's something that I wanted, so I look forward to the challenges. I look forward to I don't look forward to being away from home again, but that's part of the job. But I do look forward to the challenges of flying the helicopters over there and doing the missions. And there's not many jobs in the Army where you feel like you can make such a big difference as aviation. You have tons of jobs, and everybody's job is just as important. But when I was in Afghanistan as a non-rated crew member before, I did leave the fob. I did go pick up people. I was in the back. I protected the aircraft and everything. And you can see that smile on that guy's face that's been out there for 3 or 4 weeks, just not having a good time. And he sees that helicopter come in, and he's just like, okay, it's over. We're going back to post where it's relatively safe, and I can get hot food and a shower. And so I feel like it makes aviation makes such a big difference on the battlefield. You can change the battlefield so quickly with it that I look forward to being a bigger part of that.
When you during your training, the training course, my listeners know I went down a couple of times. We went to see you, and Katie said, "Oh, you're not going to be able to see Robert. He's in what was that period called?"
That was Warrant Officer Candidate School, is when you guys were down there.
And he can't come home, and he can't converse with us or anything. But they do let him go to church, so we'll go to church on Sunday and we'll see him. And I thought, boy, this will make anybody a churchgoer.
Yeah,
if that's the only time you can stick your head up.
Okay. So I got selected, and we moved to Lower Alabama, to Fort Rucker, Alabama. That's the home of Army Aviation. That's where all my training went on for this portion. So we get there, and I sign into what they call Warrant Officer Candidate School. Beforehand, I was an NCO, non-commissioned officer. So I had to become. You have to be an officer to fly. So I went to Warrant Officer Candidate School. It's either 5 or 7 weeks long, and it's very attention to detail. Very, they're giving you officer history lessons. You go to school, 8 hours a day, and then when you're not in school, you're, doing details and studying, because they do have written tests that you have to be able to pass that aren't the easiest in the world. And you spend a lot of time.
People forget that how much book learning there is, if you will. It's like, you got to pull the rudder over here to land and the rudder over here to go up and all that. But more of it was studying and classroom.
Yeah. So you finish Warrant Officer School, you go to what they call basic officer leadership